So in this video, I want to talk about something I don't typically talk about, and that is Ruby, Franke, and Jodi Hildebrandt. So first, I do want to give a warning. This video does contain content that some may find disturbing, and we're going to be talking about some really sensitive topics. So I'm sure a lot of you guys by now have heard of Ruby Franke. She's the disgraced family vlogger from hell. She's been all over the news. The reason this case is getting so much attention is because Ruby is a YouTuber. She had a YouTube channel called 8 Passengers, but ended up getting shut down, and it had millions of followers. And so now, her and this lady, Jodi Hildebrandt, they have like this little show where they give parenting advice to people and try to tell people how to raise their kids. But it's really ironic because now they're both in jail and they're facing years in prison potentially, and they're both facing 6 counts of child abuse after Jodi had a few of Ruby's children she was babysitting, and her 12-year-old son, Ruby's 12-year-old son, ended up escaping out of the window, ran to the neighbor's house. The neighbor literally called the cops in tears and told the cops that this child is emaciated, this child is thirsty, he's hungry, he's got wounds all over him. He was literally duct taped and bound around his hands and his legs. So now that I brought everybody up to speed with what's happened, in case you're new to this story, I want to talk about everything that's recently came out, because Jodi Hildebrandt, her niece, Jess Hildebrandt, has spoken out and exposed Jodi Hildebrandt for how evil she really is, and a lot of the things that she's saying echo exactly what Ruby Franke's son and most likely all the rest of her children were going through, and it is horrific. So let's go ahead and get into it. So she did an interview first with the Mormon Stories podcast yesterday, and she also did an interview with a news station last night where she shared even more details. Also, quick point, so when Ruby did go to court recently and she was asked why was her son restrained and tied up, she said that her son had pretty much taken advantage of other children and did inappropriate things with them and other siblings in the family, so she said she had to restrain him. It's the only way she could keep him from hurting other children. So the niece came forward, and she was so upset when she heard that. She decided to tell her whole truth, and she said that when she was a teenager, she got sent to live with Jodi for a little over a year. And while she was living with Jodi, she experienced so much trauma. She said she was duct taped, she was tied up, she was restrained, she was blindfolded, and she said that what Jodi did is Jodi kind of believed she was like God or something. She would sit there and have these visions and these dreams, and once she saw these visions and dreams, she believed it was 100% real. Like, she would go to bed, she would have a dream that her niece Jess was, out being sexually active. She also had dreams that Jess was doing drugs, even though she had zero evidence. She just had a dream, so it has to be true. And in their church, they believe if you haven't fully confessed all your sins, they're all parts of the Mormon church, by the way, then you're for sure going to hell. Like, you stole cookie in the middle of the night, you didn't fess up, you're going to hell for sure. So the niece said that Jodi would restrain her to a chair and tie her up and put duct tape over her mouth. Jodi would leave her tied up in the room for hours. Then she would come back inside and rip off the duct tape off her mouth super rough to inflict the most pain possible. And then she would ask her niece, "Are you ready to confess to your sins yet?" And when her niece said no, because she wasn't going to admit to it because she didn't do it, then Jodi would put the duct tape right back on her mouth, tie her right back up, and walk back out the room and leave her there for hours upon hours. I mean, no wonder Ruby didn't have a husband for so many years, because I can't even imagine having to deal with this as a partner, let alone as a kid. Like, you wake up and you have a dream your husband's cheating on you. Don't matter if you don't have no evidence, you're going to sit there and put them through hell and back. And it is so sad what these children had to go through. So the niece explained that she dealt with severe emotional, psychological, physical, and mental abuse, and she was told that she shouldn't be around other people. She wasn't deserving to be around other people. According to Jodi, and this is just mirroring so much of what we're seeing that Ruby's children went through, because the children were restrained. And this just seems like the same thing Ruby was putting her children through. Oh, you're not allowed to be around other people. I'm going to leave you tied up in your room all alone. And we're going to get more into that here in a second. So Ruby's friend, Jodi, has been diagnosed with multiple mental illnesses, including psychopathy. So she's a proven psychopath. And I wouldn't be surprised if Ruby is too. I mean, you pretty much gotta be to put your kids through stuff like that. And I'm just shocked to see that you have these two vile of human beings come together to just hurt children, and they think they're actually doing something good. That's how sick I think these ladies really are. They think that what they're doing is right because that's how brainwashed they are. So Jodi also accused her niece Jess of having an obsession with her trying to, satisfy herself. So I think that is just so inappropriate to continue to shame a child, a teenager who has repeated multiple times that they're not doing anything about stuff that you have zero evidence on, just because you have a dream about it and you think that this is real. So anytime Jess would go to the bathroom for just like an extra 30 seconds or a minute, maybe she had to, clean up, maybe she was looking in the mirror, she could have been doing anything, but she would come out of the bathroom and Jodi was dead set that her niece Jess was in the bathroom pleasuring herself, and that's what she was doing for that extra 30 seconds. And even her niece admitted in this interview she did with this news station, she said, at that time I didn't even know that a girl could pleasure herself. I thought it was just a boy thing. I was a virgin. I had no idea what any of that was until she started springing this on me. And I just couldn't even imagine having to go through that in a child. You can't even use the freaking bathroom. And then she would literally tie her up and punish her because she believed in her heart that her niece was going in the bathroom and pleasuring herself. Which, I mean, honestly, as a teenager, teenagers get curious and they want to explore their bodies. But in the Mormon church, stuff like that is really frowned upon. And it's looked at as almost as bad as unaliving someone in the Mormon church. So then Jodi got to the point where she was so dead set that her niece was going to the bathroom and pleasuring herself that she decided that her niece was no longer allowed to close the door when she used the bathroom. She had to keep the door wide open at all times to make sure she wasn't in there doing that. And the niece, she was only a child, and she said she didn't even know that females could do that. And so she was so young and impressionable that she really thought that she was doing something wrong and that Jodi was right and she deserved it. Even though she was just going to the bathroom and she wasn't even doing anything wrong. And that's how bad Jodi had her brainwashed. And even multiple people have came out who got therapy with both Jodi and Ruby both, and they said that their tactics are pure brainwashing. So Jodi's idea was that she would make you feel so uncomfortable that you would eventually confess all your sins. She would put the pressure on. She would literally torture these children until they confessed to their sins. And then when she felt like they weren't getting better, she'd be like, okay, there must be some sins that you haven't confessed to. That's why you're going backwards. So since she claimed that, she would just torture these kids even more, and she would ramp it up each time and make it worse. And it's truly a miracle that Ruby's son was able to escape her house and go to the neighbors and get help, because he truly helped save the lives of himself and his siblings. Because with the direction this was going and the extremes it was getting to, it was only a matter of time before things fell apart for the worst and it went too far and one of these children ended up passing away. I mean, the neighbor was literally in tears looking at the child, saying how skinny and emaciated he was. The niece explained that Jodi's whole thing was she's going to make you feel as much shame as possible. And I saw Jodi, there's a website that people made about her exposing her. And they say in the comments and the reviews that Jodi is the queen of shaming people. And that's why she even had her license stripped from her in 2012, because she was violating HIPAA laws, because she was taking on other members in her Mormon church and she was taking them on for marriage counseling. these couples would talk to Jodi about all their personal problems and issues, and they thought it was all going to remain confidential. But then Jodi would go and gossip to the whole church about everything the couple confided with her about and blast it to bigger church members and the whole congregation. And she would just publicly shame and humiliate people that are literally coming to her for therapy. So she got her license stripped away from her in 2012 because of that. And her niece, I just was so glad that she came forward, because her niece was such a well-spoken, strong woman, and I'm glad she spoke her truth. And I feel like her story that she shared, it needs to be heard, and that's why I made sure I made a video about it. Once you hear what she said, a lot of what Ruby's children went through makes sense in how they're found, and I have a feeling that Jesse will be brought to testify in court, which I'm confident they're going to. I sure hope so, because Jodi Hildebrandt needs to be held accountable in the highest court of the law, right along with Ruby Franke. I'm sure a lot of you guys have seen a few examples on TV or YouTube of Ruby Franke's parenting skills from her parenting vlogs. But literally, in one vlog, for example, I wish I could show you guys the video clips, but it involves children, and I literally just got in trouble for sharing videos on my channel. So there's a video where Ruby's just sitting there talking, laughing, hanging out, and her daughter comes up to her and says that she peed the bed. So Ruby was like, okay, and she laughs at her daughter, and she tells her daughter to go sleep on the bathroom floor. She didn't help clean her daughter's bed. She didn't help clean her daughter up. She just continued on with her vlog, went about her day, and completely neglected her child. And there was also several times the children forgot their school lunches, because it didn't matter if their children were 5 or 15. If they were in school, they were expected to make their lunches every single day. And I'm sorry, I couldn't imagine as a kindergartner or first grader to remember to make my school lunch and bring it every day. So of course, there's a few days that the children forgot to make their lunches. So they called their mother upset, and the mother was like, okay, this is a great vlog moment. She pulls out the camera and vlogs her conversation with her daughter as her daughter's choking up, begging her mother to bring her food because she's starving and she doesn't have any way to feed herself. And her mother told her that she has to learn the hard way. And then the mother even spoke with the teacher and told the teacher to make sure that none of her friends or nobody else gave her any food because she needs to learn the hard way. And I think that is so freaking messed up and so out of line. And it is so hard, especially as a child, to be productive in a full day of school if you're not eating, and to put that much responsibility on somebody who's in first grade to make and take their lunch every single day. And this happened multiple times, and there's just so many more examples. This video is already getting long, so I don't want to get into every single one of them. But if you guys want to hear more about it, let me know in the comments below. But Ruby came out and said, as I mentioned earlier, when she had to explain to the judge why her 12-year-old child was bound and tied up, she said that her son had allegedly took advantage of over 20 kids, including kids in the neighborhood, kids in the church, and multiple siblings, and she said that that's why he was tied up. So here's this lady still tormenting and hurting her child from jail, and the worst part of it is, we don't know if these are lies, exaggeration, or if there's some truth to what Ruby's saying. That will have to be proved in the court of law. But I think it is super vile to put your child on blast like that and attempt to save yourself. Like, just take away the son being tied up for a second and Ruby's claims why she did that. She still starved those children, she malnourished them, and the child had open wounds all over him. The neighbor who called 911 was so choked up and literally in tears at looking at the state of that child. So she claims that her child started watching adult movies, the P word, when he was only 3 years old. And I am sorry, I do not believe that one bit. I have a 3-year-old girl, and she would never do something like that. Like, they don't even know anything about gender, attraction, or anything like that at 3 years old. And I'm sorry, I just do not believe that at all. How is a 3-year-old child gonna know how to open that up and get into that on a tablet or phone or whatever, unless you're doing that for him and opening it up and literally duct taping his eyes open and forcing him to watch it? The crazy part is, when the son was asked why he was tied up, he even told the neighbor, while the neighbor was on the phone with 911, that he was restrained and in that condition because it was his fault. He was blaming himself. But thank God that son was smart enough to know better, to run away and call the police and get help, because he just saved himself and the rest of those children's lives. But one of the saddest parts about all this, due to Ruby's claims that her son was touching other kids, I mean, like I said, if it is true, then it's understandable, but this is just lies and her attempting to use him as a scapegoat. This is hella foul, because now the son, all the children are now, well, 4 of the children are now in a group home waiting to be adopted. And now the son that she made those claims about, he is not allowed to go into a home with any of his brothers or sisters or any other children. So he has to go into a family by himself with no other children because of Ruby's accusation. She just put the blame completely on her son. And Jodi's niece even said that Ruby, the accusation she's making towards her son, echoes the same things that Jodi was telling her niece. Like, she accused the niece of having an abortion when she'd never had one, but she said she had a dream about it, so it had to be true. And she even accused her niece of doing illegal substances, even though she had never tried them, she never had any alcohol, and she ended up having to go to 12-step programs and different treatment classes, even though she had nothing wrong with her and had never even tried a legal substance. So the niece was asked by the interviewer why she believed it took so long for Jodi to get caught, since she was doing this under the radar for so many years. And the niece explained that there's a multiple different reasons, but one of the main reasons is the church promoted Jodi heavily. So all the people trust the church, and the bishop was referring people of the church when they had problems in their marriage and their families to Jodi. Also, because a lot of people are also afraid of Jodi. When somebody speaks out against Jodi, she does everything in her power to ruin their credibility and their reputation. And this has been confirmed in negative reviews against her. We haven't even begun to touch the surface on all the negative reviews about Jodi, and there is so much more that has been exposed about her recently. I had an insider source who actually used to go to church with Jodi who told me a lot of information, and it's a lot. And I already had this video almost at 20 minutes, so if you guys want to hear more about this and want another video, then please let me know in the comments below. I still have a whole bunch of tea that I haven't even touched the surface on, but I want to make sure there's enough interest in it before I go making another 20-minute long video on all this. But let me know in the comments below. Check out my lashes and my lash products at AccordingtoAmber.com. You can use code 20OFF and you can get 20% off your order. But that's it for this video, guys. Let me know what you guys think. Give this video a thumbs up, subscribe, and thank you so much for watching.